How's it going, YouTube? This is the Atheist Chef, and today we're talking about lesser gods. Lesser gods. This is something that G-Man has been back and forth with Alex Botten. And his basic argument is that, atheists are their own gods. How many videos he's done with this, how many Google Hangouts with Alex Botten have been fighting over the same crap over and over again. And I was watching the Hangout that was from today, and I just had to make a video because, wow. So, G-Man's definition for a lesser god, which is what he believes an atheist is calling himself, is a god that is a person, is their own final authority or their own final judge, and then they are a object of worship. Those two qualities, or three, I guess if you consider authority and judge kind of two or three different things, whatever. But those few qualities are what makes an atheist a god. And then he finishes it up by saying, if you yourself are a god, then how can you call yourself an atheist? But basically saying, when you're a god, you can't be an atheist because you believe in yourself and you're a god, so you have to believe in gods. I know. So I decided I need to try and break this down a little bit and make this easier to follow. Plus, I realized something that I don't believe G-Man ever considered during this discussion, or all of these discussions he's had with Alex Botten. Because if he had, he wouldn't have come up with this argument. So let's first cover why he wants to use the final judge, final authority thing. In several of the videos, they make reference to the Roman and the Greek pantheon of gods. Zeus, the god of thunder. Dionysus, the god of wine, and I can't think of any other, but they all had their own niche. They were the final authority in their respective fields. However, the reason why they were the final authority is because they had supernatural powers related to that field. So, right there we have a fallacy of equivocation. You're trying to say that we're the final authority on this because blah, blah, blah. No, doesn't work out that way. Second of all, just because we share some characteristics of a god does not mean that we're necessarily a god. Being a god had a lot of definitions or a lot of characteristics that apply to it being a god. Actually having supernatural powers, being immortal. Those things that we don't really fit into. Alex Botten made a great, argument that, okay, so just because, something has claws, paws, fur, pointy ears, and cool looking eyes, does not mean that it's a lion. Could be a cat. The same goes with sharing certain characteristics of these Roman gods or any of these lesser gods. So what if we have certain characteristics like them? Even if I allow the whole final authority crap, that doesn't matter. That's one characteristic. You're ignoring all of his other characters. Wow, I sound a lot like G-Man. You're ignoring all of the other characteristics of gods. But seriously, okay, they had qualities like such being supernatural and being in heaven kind of thing, having all these cool powers, being immortal, all these things that we don't have. So A cannot be B. A can sound partly like B, but it cannot be A and B at the same time. So let's cover this final judge and final authority business. Throughout our life, and these are examples that Alex Botten and G-Man used, they talked about speed limit signs, and do you obey them or do you not obey them? When do you go to work? Do I not go to work? What reasons do I have to go and not go to work? When do I go to the bathroom, etc.? So G-Man is arguing that you are the authority on when you do those things. And Alex Botten says, well, no, because, I want to work and I have to have food and whatnot, so I need to continue to work. And the bosses are the ones that actually line up the hours of when I show up, and I have a contract with them to go to work. And I can go to the bathroom either on the toilet or in the toilet rather, or I can go all over myself when I piss myself. Or do I obey the speed limit signs? Well, I probably should, because the authorities, the police authorities, are the ones that establish the speed limit signs. Now, of course, G-Man's reply is, well, in the end, it's your thought. I mean, it's your control. It's under your final authority. You can choose not to go. You can choose not to pee. You can choose, whatsoever. And the point being is that regardless of what the external forces are, you make the final judgment call. And then the next part, G-Man says that you need to be an object of worship to be considered a lesser god. Now, let's look up the definitions for worship. I'm using the Hebrew lexicon from blueletterbible.com or .org, I forget. Worship in the New Testament has the following definitions. In the New Testament, to render religious service or homage, to worship. To perform sacred services, to offer gifts, to worship God in the observance of the rites instituted for his worship. Of priests, to officiate, to discharge the sacred office. Worship in the Old Testament, to bow down, to prostrate oneself before superior in homage, before God in worship, before false gods, before angels. Now let's look up with the regular dictionary definition. The feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity. Now, when it comes to any of those three definitions, pertaining to the ones from the Bible, because you'd think you would be arguing from the Bible, or the biblical definition, the Hebrew and the Greek definitions for those words, us as atheists don't consider ourselves an object of worship. Period. I mean, some people may be pricks like that, but, I mean, by the definition of atheism, not believing in a God, then, we're pretty much all going to agree that we're not all objects of worship. To help further clarify what G-Man is saying about his definition for worship, he says this in the Google Hangout. About an hour, 24 minutes, 20 seconds, says they are self-worshiping or accepting worship. Hour, 24 minutes, 35 seconds, because he exalts himself so great, so powerful, that he is better than anybody else. His opinion is the only one that matters, and therefore he's a god. He then goes on to say that an hour, 26 minutes, 14 seconds, basically we're talking about, when they are their own final authority, but then he adds on, if you are the one who determines whether something is good or evil, that would make you the final judge in your life. If you're exalting yourself higher than God, you are making yourself out to be greater than him. Therefore, you are making yourself to be worshipped. I don't quite understand how making an observation of something being good or evil means that I find myself to be the final judge of my life. I'm just making an observation. If I think something is evil, if I think a man grabbing babies and torturing them, that's evil, yeah, that's my opinion on what is evil. Then if I say that boobs are good, then I say that's my opinion that boobs are good, and I believe that many of you would agree with me. So, but still, I don't understand what this has to do with being the final authority or final judge on my life. Then, of course, we followed up with him saying that if you are exalting yourself higher than God, you are making yourself out to be greater than him. Well, first off, fundamental failure with this argument is that we don't believe that God exists. So, how can I exalt myself higher than him? I don't acknowledge his existence. Now, technically, I would be, because 0 being where God currently is, because I don't believe he exists, and then like me, obviously I'm by default, because higher up by default, because, well, I exist. So, yes, to you, God exists, and to you, you're looking at us, and we're putting ourselves up higher than God. But in order for us to do that, we'd have to acknowledge his existence. So, sorry, that it doesn't work. But I want to touch up on this exaltation, himself, making himself so great, so powerful, better than anyone else. His opinion is the only one that matters, is his own, and therefore he's a god. Well, no self-respecting person does that, much less somebody that's an atheist or a secular humanist. I mean, think about it. We talked about earlier about, obeying the speed limits, going to work, etc. Well, if it was in our own opinion, we were only just doing as our opinion is the only one that matters, well, we wouldn't go to work and we wouldn't go do that, and we would go do speed, just go faster than the speed limit allows. But obviously, we have other things in consideration of the law, the safety of ourselves and our family members and other people that are on the road. When it comes to work, wanting to feed the family and pay the bills and all that kind of good stuff, and fulfilling obligations. So obviously, just from the facts of why we make the decisions that we do, we are not exalting ourselves higher than anything. And the fact that these external forces do change the decisions that we make in our lives, and that we can't be selfish and do what we want, means that we're not exalting ourselves and we can't be a god. As far as worship is concerned, I do not want to be worshipped, nor am I putting myself in a position to be worshipped. You are the Christians with the God to worship. And so, yes, you are looking at us and seeing that we are putting ourselves above your God, and therefore, because God deserves to be worshipped, then the atheist that's putting himself even higher deserves worship or more worship. But we don't want that. We don't believe he exists. So you cannot conflate our non-belief in his existence into saying that we want to be worshipped. As far as arguments go, this has to be one of the worst. The first premise is that somehow we are making ourselves as God because, we are the final authority, that we have final authority, and violates the law of non-contradiction. The second premise, that determining what is good or evil means you're the final judge in your life, it's a non sequitur. Third premise, that if you're exalting yourself higher than God, then you're making yourself to be greater than him. Essentially, it's a straw man, and it's a complete misunderstanding of our position, because we don't believe in God, so we can't make ourselves up higher or put ourselves up higher than God. And finally, the conclusion that we're making ourselves to be worshipped, well, I guess you'd call it another straw man, but it's something that we're not even doing. So this entire argument just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. The premises don't add up. They're not incorrect. They're based on so many fallacies. There's nothing true about any of these statements. So, Chef, you may be asking yourself, what's this really cool thing that G-Man didn't consider? Well, let's think about this for a second. The whole argument or discussion was about being a lesser God, being the final judge and final authority on our lives and what we do. Do we go to work? Do we speed, etc.? However, at the same time, Christians, show of hands, anybody figuring out where I'm going with this? 3, 2, 1. Christians, you are the final judge and final authority in your lives. Yes, you have God telling you what to do. Yes, you have your Bible and your Holy Spirit filling you in. But you are the ones making the choice to do it. So, just like us, you are the final authority, and you are the judge of your life. So that's it. This is the Atheist Chef signing off. Good night. Peace.